Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm going to give just a couple more seconds for people to hop on. I hope your day is going well so far. All right, awesome. We'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Alertus Power Lunch, updating your SSL certificates. My name is Sarah Gillum, and I'm a trainer here at Alertus. And we're also joined by Steve Folk, the technical support lead, who will be leading the conversation today. And updating SSL certificates is an essential task to ensure that your Alertus system maintains the latest security standards and avoids any potential vulnerabilities. In this session, we will demonstrate how to use the certificate manager in the Alertus Server Setup Tool to ensure that your SSL certificates remain up to date. And then we'll also take a look at how to update the SSL certificates through editing the configuration files for the Alertus server. And while this session will cover installing the certificates, we also plan to cover generating the certificate and creating the certificate signing request in a future Power Lunch or how-to video on the Alertus Training YouTube channel. And then I will also share some additional resources at the end of the session today around those topics. And in addition to updating the SSL certificates, we'll also discuss some common troubleshooting steps, some best practices, and of course, save time for any questions. And I will also note that this is an interactive session, so please feel free to ask any questions using the Q&A feature or the chat. And please also be aware that this session is being recorded for training purposes. But without further introduction, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Steve to get started.
Thank you, Sarah. So let me go ahead and share. Okay. And if anyone has any issues with seeing that or anything, just let me know.
Looks good, Steve.
Looks good. Awesome. Thanks. Okay. Yep. And as Sarah said, we're going to be reviewing installing SSL certificates through the certificate manager and also through editing the configuration files, as both are valid options that can be done. So the for the Alertus server, the certificate files, as you can see here, typically live, or they do live, in alertus/conf/ssl. And after you get your certificate files, let's go over to here. So here is the new certificate files that I have for our new server. Your depending on your certificate vendor, they may give you multiple options. They may send you an email with multiple download links, or they may just send you a general email that says, "Hey, your certificate is ready for download. Please please log into your certificate management portal to download them." It'll give you valid options. You typically want to download it in, it may say Apache compatible format, or it may also say base64 format. But since the Alertus server uses Apache, that is what we will want to download. So we'll be using this. You get your certificate from the certificate authority. This can be internal or external. It just depends on the organization's practices, but you need that certificate and also the matching key file that you can also see here. Typically, it's donated, it has key in the name. And your organization may or may not provide you with what's called an intermediate certificate that can also be added, that may or may not be needed for your use case. But so once we are in the alertus/conf folder, actually, I'm going to copy our certificates over to here. So I'm going to take our certificate, our key file, and our intermediate certificate file here. I'm going to copy those into our conf/SSL folder. And then I'm going to go up one directory so that I'm in the alertus/conf folder, as that is where the the config files for Alertus, where you configure those certificates, live. There are two specific config files that you will need to adjust. Your organization may be using one or both of these. Uh, if your organization is utilizing our IP text-to-speech or IPAVA appliance, then you will be using both this impl_ssl.conf file and also this impl_server_service.xml file. So we'll go and edit them one at a time. I have them open right here. So generally what we will do is there's 2 to 3 lines that you'll want to edit depending on if you have the certificate chain or not. The first line right here is this line right here. It is the server certificate file. This is the one that you downloaded from your certificate authority. So I am going to double check my values right here. So it is right here. A handy thing that if you're updating them manually, you can just hold down the shift key, right click, and then you'll have this copy as path option that shows up. And that copies the full path name so that you don't accidentally introduce any typos. I think we've all been there. I've definitely typoed plenty of things in my day, so this helps to ensure there's no issues with typos. I'm gonna go back into there and grab the key file. And it has key at the name. Again, shift right click, copy as path. And then we're going to go down to the next config option that is right here that says the server private key file. And then we're going to go over to here and update the certificate, the intermediate, which is this chain only. And for the certificate chain, you're depending on who you get it from, they may have it be called something different. Uh, it may be called intermediate. It may be called or have a different name. And also, depending on your organization, you may or may not have used an intermediate certificate in the past. And in this config file, I have not. So those files are commented out. A comment in this file is denoted by a pound. So we're going to go ahead and just remove that. After we have updated the server certificate file, the server key file, and the chain file, we're going to go ahead and then save this. So go to File and then Save. And then the next step there will be to update the impl server service config file here, which is right here. Mine looks just slightly different than what you'll see on a default configuration. But there is 2 line items right here, a certificate file and a key file. So we are going to do the same thing as we did previously. Find the Alertus certificate file, shift right click, copy as path. And then we are going to highlight the certificate file. Put that in there. And then we are going to highlight the key file, copy as path, and highlight that, paste that right in there, and then we are going to go again, file, save. And then after we have made these changes, the way for the Alertus system to take these into configuration is to restart our services. Typically, to do that on your server, you go into the Windows Start menu, you go into the Alertus Technologies folder, and then there is a restart option right here. Click on that, and it will take care of stopping and starting the services in the correct order. So now, this will take a few minutes for the system to stop and start these services. And it will give you a progress window right here. We can see that services have stopped and they have started. So now we can go ahead and find our any key to dismiss the window. And now we just need to wait for the system to fully start back up. You can just give it a few minutes, or also alternatively, you can check the log files by going in again into the start menu, the Alerts Technologies folder, and this View All Logs folder. This will show our uh, the system start state. And you can see that the system is starting up and initializing. And Sarah, while this starts up, do we have any questions so far?
We don't have any questions yet, but definitely as a reminder, if you do have any questions, feel free to type them at any time into the chat or into the Q&A box, and we can definitely get those answered.
Okay.
Then I will also share some links in the chat for some articles on our customer portal that will be helpful and give you some more information about what Steve has just shown.
And while we wait for that to go up, I can show you how through our setup tool. So the Alert server, and this is accessible directly on the Windows server that Alertus is installed on. We have our Alertus Server Setup Tool, which is used for installing additional packages as well as managing certificates and single sign-on. You will see the packages that your organization is licensed for right here. Um, but for right now, we're going into the managed certificates, and also we can see in the background that the console has finished initialization because you'll see it says response to console complete, response status 200. So, but for managing certificates through the server setup tool, we'll click manage certificates and then there's two tabs here for managing your SSL certificates and trusted certificates. Trusted certificates would be um, is for in instilling trust with the Alertus server and devices. But for here, if you have not used the Alertus server to manage the certificates, you will have to check the enable HTTPS button, and that is just enabling HTTPS certificate management through the server setup tool. And then you can optionally have it manage both Apache and or Tomcat, depending on your configuration if your organization uses one or both. The Alertus Server Setup Tool has a Let's Encrypt integration. So if your Alertus server can, if your Alertus server is accessible through port 80 through Let's Encrypt, which if you're not sure if your Alertus server is, you would want to validate and double check with your IT department on that. But you put in your Alertus server host name here. So in this case, for this server, that is the host name. You can choose how often it renews. Let's Encrypt certificates are valid for 90 days, and there is no automation that will renew them. Typically, we renew them every 55 days just to ensure that there is plenty of time in the event before certificates expire. And then you can choose like the specific renewal in hour, minute, 24-hour day format. In this case, it would renew every 55 days at 11:30 p.m. You can choose an email address that the expiration warning emails get sent to, just as an additional mechanism for that. The specific TLS versions, we would recommend version 1.2 and 1.3 be enabled, and you can ensure that the Alertus recommended ciphers, security ciphers, are used so that your server is always using the most recent insecure ciphers. After that, or you can also use the other, which is the ones that we're going to use in this scenario because I already have them, and it will read the server certificate files and pre-populate them. So if you just want Alertus to the server setup tool to manage that, you're not necessarily renewing the certificates. In that case, all we have to do is just click apply, and it will show you the output here. It's saying, hey, can we update these or not? In this case, it's saying that, hey, my Tomcat file is different than what it expects. Uh, so any errors will be logged here. And I could just apply here. It updated the Apache config because I decided not to manage Tomcat through this, and it's saying that that you need to restart the Alertus Apache service to complete configuration. So once you click this restart services, a command prompt window will pop up to stop and start the Alertus Apache service. And to start the services here. So Tomcat is up and starting. And that once the services is finished restarting, like we saw in the other command prompt, we will go from there to start the services. And then once they start back up, we will check and validate that the um, certificates are there. I will say if while we wait for the services to start back up, if you have any, if for instance you notice that when you go into services or you can't access the alerts console when you are after you have updated your certificates. I'm going to make sure that the Alertus Apache service and the Alertus Tomcat service are in running state. If they are not in running state, specifically, typically this can happen with Alertus Apache. If, for instance, you make a typo or you have a mismatching Alertus server setup a certificate and key file, what you can do is you can go into your alerts folder. You can go into the logs folder, or instance here. You can even open it in Beartail. You can just navigate into C, Alertus logs, and then you want to expand this. Look at the apache-error.log file, because if, for instance, you have a typo or you have a mismatched certificate and key file for whatever reason, that will be noted in here. It does show some other detailed startup start down procedure, but it will show there. If you don't see anything, and then of course it is timestamped. If you do not see any errors or additional notation in this log file, the next step is you can alternatively look in the Windows Event Viewer, the application side, because you'll see a option of Alertus Apache. However, if you don't see anything in that, or if you have issues with either or, please feel free to give Alertus a protocol. You can call us 866-425-3788, extension 2. You can email us at support@alertus.com or create a case on the customer portal help.alertus.com. And we're always happy to assist with any issues you may have regarding SSL certificates or even questions there. We see that the system is loaded, so I'm going to launch my web browser. And go through all of the right there. Microsoft wants me to go through. So then we're going to go to our page here. And see, I get to the login page perfectly fine. I don't have there's no error messages about the site not being secure. It is saying our connection is secure, so our certificate was successfully updated here. This certificate was issued through Let's Encrypt, so it's valid for 90 days, and we'll go from there. So, there's sort of general process steps for updating the SSL certificate through either manually through the config files or through our server setup tool. Let's go ahead and stop sharing there.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. That was super helpful. And we did get a question in the chat. They asked, what other services could we check besides Apache if the console isn't working after updating the certificate?
Okay, so if you are going through HTTPS, um, and you're getting a message that says service is unavailable, I would check if the Alertus Tomcat service is running. Because if Apache is running, but Tomcat is not, or sometimes if Tomcat is just still starting up, still initializing, you may get a services unavailable message. But I would check in the services that Alertus Apache and Alertus Tomcat is running.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. And please feel free to put any other questions that you all have in the chat or the Q&A box as well. And I did go ahead and link some documents into the chat. The top one is the configuration guide for SSL certificates. So that kind of outlines the whole process for you. And then there is also a configuration quick guide for installing an SSL certificate on Apache for HTTPS. And then the last document that I am going to link into the chat is this one here. So this is the user quick guide for the DigiCert certificate utility to generate a certificate signing request. So hopefully those resources will be helpful, and definitely let us know if you all would be interested in another session to go more in depth into the full certificate life cycle and talk more about how to generate a certificate signing request. Awesome. Thank you all again for joining today. I hope you have a great rest of your Friday. We'll stick on for a couple more minutes if there are any other questions, and hopefully we'll see you at some future power lunches coming up. Awesome. It looks like there's no more questions coming in, so we're going to go ahead and sign off for today. But again, thank you all for your time. Hope you have a great rest of your Friday. Take care.